all very welcome to the Festival Gallery this morning for our conversation with Mr. David Mach, who's our great friend and collaborator for a long number of years. I just want to point out that we're recording and filming this conversation this morning, so just to be aware there's a camera going around.
But don't worry, any bad language will be bleeped out.
So I'm just going to refer to my notes for a moment just to give you a little bit of background to David and to our work for this particular show, and then for our work over the years. So few artists have reshaped boundaries of contemporary sculpture and installation like David Mach. There you go. A creative force of staggering energy and invention.
Suicide
David is one of the UK's most celebrated and prolific artists, renowned for his bold, large-scale works that turn everyday materials into explosive visual experiences, like the one right behind us here. Born in Fife in Scotland, where he now lives once again, David grew up amid the muscular industrial landscape of a mining family. Colliery shafts, oil rigs, steelworks at dockyards formed both a backdrop and a blueprint for his future artistic vision. His fascination with mass, form, and material has evolved into a signature style that transforms the ordinary into the extraordinary, whether working with newspapers, tires, coat hangers, or entire vehicles. At the heart of this year's Festival Visual Arts programme is Burning Down the House, which is the installation behind me, a commission of epic scale and ambition. This monumental installation erupts with an energy, a cottage mid-explosion, sprueing a fridge, television, sofa, and other objects. Cinematic yet sculptural, it's a visceral spectacle of chaos, domesticity, and destruction in a single visual punch. Also featured in the exhibition are several of David's iconic coat hanger sculptures, which are in the room behind us here, and we'll walk around through all of those in a little bit. So David's creative journey with Galway International Arts Festival spans nearly 2 decades. We first showed his work in 2006 with a piece called Hellbent at the Galway City Museum Plaza. In 2012, audiences encountered the awe-inspiring Precious Light, headlined by the immense Golgotha, a crucifixion rendered in steel coat hangers. Then came Rock and Roll in 2018 in the Printworks Gallery, a spectacular commission that packed a boat, caravan, and a car with over 165,000 newspapers into that space. And most recently in 2023, I'm sure a lot of you will probably recall, David's explosive The Oligarch's Nightmare, another commission, stunned our audiences here with a detonating Range Rover, almost in the exact same position as where our exploding cottage is this year. David is an incredible collaborator, and each of these major installations is the result of extraordinary collaboration and effort. So these are not solo acts, they're collective feats, and we want to just acknowledge and pay our gratitude to the dedicated team of artists who worked alongside David to bring this ambitious project to life. In particular, Vincent Bell, Mark Malloy, alongside Simon Kennedy and Ciara Holland. And their skill, passion, and commitment are an integral part of this work's success. So it's always a thrill to welcome David back to Galway. And this new commission isn't just a festival highlight, it's a bold declaration of scale, daring, imagination, and the fearless ambition that has always defined his work. So there you are now. I'll put that away.
So, I'm just going to quit while we're ahead there. That's pretty good.
Well, credit where credit due, I think. So, David, you're welcome back to Galway. It's always a joy to have you
here as usual. Can I just say, because we gave speeches the other day, and by the time I got to me talking, I was sort of worn out, and I had made a very short, kind of stubby speech, and I sort of regretted that, because I should have said then, it's great to be back in Galway. I can't believe how many times I've been here. I can't believe that you keep asking me back, which is fantastic. I feel like I've actually been adopted by Galway, Dad. You know,
we have a little chip attached to his leg.
Yeah, no, so it's just very, very lucky that you have allowed me to explore ideas that sometimes you can't do in other places, because galleries and other festivals, even other places, aren't that kind of liberal with the time and the space and material and even the budgets, things like that. So it's been a really fantastic set of opportunities, which I hope will continue.
Yeah. It won't be the last time. It won't be the last time. But you know, before we start to chat, just to add maybe to what you were saying, like we love working with artists like David who are so open and who just pull away any kind of barrier, any kind of boundary in terms of audiences interacting and experiencing art. And it's exhibitions like this and other large-scale shows like this over the last 20 years that have really elevated our audiences who engage with the galleries, engage with all the artists. And it's fantastic to see. I'm sure this year will be the same as the last couple of years. Queues going down Chop Street nearly every morning as the gallery opens with people waiting to get in. And in 2023, when the Oligarch's Nightmare was here, we had almost 60,000 people come through the doors, which is really, really phenomenal. I think other museums and institutions wouldn't boast that in a month, yet alone in a fortnight. So
it's partly to do with the way you run things here too, because you do welcome people in like that. Yeah. Sometimes there's a barrier, a kind of an invisible barrier. A director can create that by accident or willfully. It's not like that here. You know, it's very, very open. And you want, if you're going to be making art, if you're going to have performances, if you're going to have theatre, if you're going to have circus, if you're going to have whatever plays that you want to see, you want that. That's the great thing I think about art. Come on in. I know you're suspicious and you think this might be a piece of shit, but you might have a really nice night too. And it might just make you think about something else. I mean, yesterday or the day before when I was flying back to Scotland, I actually bought a really skinny book about poetry, and I was laughing at myself. You know, for when I was a kid, I used to say poetry is for wankers. You know, that's all bollocks. And that persisted for a lot of years. Yeah, until I started writing my own poetry. And then I had a different attitude. But I know the woman who was the author of that book, and I know her to be a really interesting character and a powerful storyteller, very funny. And a bit raunchy, sort of 75, heading towards 80. I'm thinking, fuck, you want to be like that. You want to be that kind of person, you know? I caught her at home in Scotland. We have a little festival in our village. I found out that, I don't know if anybody remembers Joan Bakewell. She was on the telly. She was a kind of national kind of a treasure, Joan. She's 75, 80 as well. She's along the coast, a few miles away from our little festival. I get in touch and I say, hey, do you fancy coming and just giving us a talk and talking to the village? And she came over and did that. This other lady was there, whose name I'll remember in a minute. I've gotten to the age where I can't remember a fucking thing. And they were sitting chatting to each other, right? 75, 80, complaining that they couldn't find anybody to shag them now. You know, a national treasure and a national poet weren't talking about art and concepts and ideals. They were talking about that. I thought that was absolutely brilliant. You know, so, yeah. Anyway.
We'll move the storytelling on. The first thing we see when we come in the door of the gallery is the beautiful lithograph on the wall beside the sign over here, which is called The Second Homeowner's Nightmare.
The Second Homeowner's Nightmare. So you're kind of playing, you're kind of teasing a few ideas there. You know, and my partner Lindsay's a printmaker. She's made it for me. There's sort of 18 layers in that print, so it's quite anybody tells you that printmaking is a kind of an instant, immediate thing, tell them to fuck off, because it's not. It takes forever to make those things. You know? But she's done a brilliant job. And you're picking I like the idea of somebody walking up to a picture of a little cottage. Oh, look, there's a cottage and some sheep and a wee dog. Oh, hang on a minute, it's blown up. You know, you do a kind of set. You know, you're playing with people's ideas about an expectation maybe, and you get that a lot with art. People expect your art to be in a particular way. They come in, you come in with preconceived ideas, armed to the teeth with those things, and you are the artist, sort of trying to break that stuff down. We don't have those preconceived ideas about the people that are coming in, and I like working in front of people. I hate working in the studio, and wondering what the fuck everybody else is doing. I want to be there in amongst things. And people, they're funny about art. They're kind of scared about asking you a question, or think they might appear to be not knowledgeable or sort of not cultural enough or some damn thing. I mean, fuck all that sort of stuff, I think, Just get in and let's mix it up a little bit. And if it goes a little bit all right, then we can have a bit of a fight about it. And I like all that too. And I've grown up, from when I first started making the, when I was a kid, 5-year-old kid, I'd go down the beach and I'd try and block the little streams, the burns that ran through the golf course onto the beach. It was just a great thing to do, And you've got all this material lying there. And I would get my pals to come down, about 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 of those guys, only that size, picking up rocks that size and rolling them into the streams and really blocking them and flooding the golf course and having guys with clubs. You little bastards, My friends soon sort of started to thin out. We're not playing with you, it's like fucking working in a factory. And you're only 4 or 5, and there's your first team of assistants helping you make something, and you're playing at that, and those are different days. We would disappear at 4 or 5 years old and come back at 12 o'clock at night, and nobody would bat an eyelid. Didn't send out search teams, didn't give a fuck. Maybe, who knows? Most of us made it back to the house. We lost a few on the way there. So they were different days, but we had this massive playground. We were surrounded by all this stuff, all this material lying about, and we had like groves and bushes that we could bury into and make sort of dens and get into terrible trouble. And we were always setting things on fire. That was another thing. Used to do that and sort of just get the hell out, And actually making this piece in particular, and actually making the installations that I make, they're a bit like that. You're trying to be that 5-year-old still. And maybe you are, maybe you haven't really grown up much beyond that, because you need to enjoy it. I don't want to do this so that it's labor. I want to enjoy it, and I want to talk to the people that I'm working with, and they will tell you wonderful things, and you'll not only find out how to make art, you'll find out how to live life, how to be, what to sort of take into consideration, what to respect, what to take the mickey out of. And actually, you do find that when you work in Ireland, you don't get very much respect from your from your assistant. But that's all great. You've got to bounce back from stuff like that. I really like that. So it becomes philosophical really quickly without being pretentious. And art and contemporary art and theatre and plays and poetry can be awfully pretentious, which I'm scared of that. I don't like that. I don't like formality. If I'm in a formal situation, I have to try and lighten it up and make it informal, because I can't deal with formality. Just sort of does me in, And so your battle to make things like this is a battle to do with that, just as you wend your way through life, if you like,
So Dave, just ask you a few things specifically about this. I mean, when you walk in, it's such an assault on the senses. And we're looking at a sculpture, we're looking at installation, we're looking at painting, we're looking at a single moment captured in time. And there's a kind of a sort of theatrical spectacle to it as well, where you're wondering, well, what if we'd come in 5 minutes earlier? What might have happened and what's going to happen in a few minutes' time. So would you talk to us just a little bit about the kind of the process of how you decide what you're going to capture, and then the approach in terms of making it, just to give people an idea as to we have a couple of different workshops off-site, the festival has, and we did some initial work on that in the early May. And then we moved into the gallery on site on the 18th of May, I think it was, and the team have been working with David up until we opened just yesterday. So it's a big project with a lot of people, a lot of commitment. Yeah.
It takes some time to produce the thing, and you're worried that you've not picked the right thing to make in the first place. And you're worried also it's a bit of an ambitious idea, and if you don't make it right, it'll look like shit. And people will laugh at it and say, "Oh, you guy that made that terrible work," and you don't want it. You want to be the guy who made that brilliant thing that really works. So you don't quite know what you're making. Is it an installation? Is it a sculpture? Is it a painting? Is it happening? And all of those things. Is it part of a film? Is it something else? And I think this thing is a kind of new. It's almost like a new form of art that you're inventing, and you're only discovering that thing as you wend your way through it. That's important to me to try. And I also wanted this thing to be different from the oligarch's nightmare that we made 2 years ago. I don't want to be you the guy that blows things up. No, I want this to be a different piece, have a different narrative, a different feel, a different story to it, something else that you can buy into. And I want it to puzzle the hell out of you. When you come in here, I want your jaw to hit the floor and go, fuck, You don't do that in art galleries. And actually, what you do in art galleries, when you walk in, you ask your pal, well, what do you think? And I find that amazing. Well, surely you know what you really think. If you think it's terrible, just fucking say it. You don't go to a pub to listen to a band and they're really terrible and applaud. You throw bottles at them. You make a decision about that stuff. I love that. Having worked in front of people for 50 years, you're kind of ready for that. You're ready for that kind of, you're going to say something that I'm not going to like, and you have to have that kind of conversation. And I want the work that I make to always be like that. I want it to sort of touch you up here. I want it to affect your heart. I want the hairs on the back of your neck to stand up. I want you to get all excited. I want you to burst out laughing. I want you to throw money at me. I want you to, I want all of those things. I'm a greedy son of a bitch, for all of that. And nothing short of that will actually do. So it's funny making a print, actually, because you make a print and you put that on the wall, and you kind of walk away from it. And it's a creative thing. I enjoy making it, but it's not keeping me awake at night. I'd rather make the other stuff. And now I'm thinking I'm writing things for theatre. I'm writing poetry. I'm working on making up ideas for film. There's so many things. This thing has spawned so many ideas in my head already. It's completely mad. And I live on a beach in Scotland. I walk along that beach. That beach will give you ideas every day anyway. And it's about 3 miles, beautiful white sand, gorgeous, good weather. It's called the Riviera of Scotland, where I live. And I'm walking along and I'm talking to myself. And you meet people, you know everybody there. And I'll have ideas and I'm going, no, not fucking doing that. I'm not fucking doing that. And so I just tell myself, there's already too many bloody things to do. No fucking way. Get the 3 miles back. I mean, I've already figured out how to sort of make some of that. All I need now is the money and somebody to persuade somebody to let me do this thing. And that, you start developing other ideas. Things start to move forward. This thing is like a weird new pop, surreal thing. It doesn't really exist. I can't think of anywhere that has something like this that existed before that I kind of copied or was inspired by. You feel like you're doing a new thing. Now that may or may not be true. I'm sure there's somebody going to come forward and show me a picture. I actually, when I got back to Scotland, there's a whole bunch of women who knit this stuff, and they just put them on top of post office, where you put your letter in, all that sort of stuff. When I got back, there was a little cottage. I sent you a picture. A little cottage sitting on the hill, sort of looked like that. I think, oh fuck, it's been done before. And there's a wee thing in your head there, going on like that. Because what is that then? That you've picked the right subject. That cottage is like some sort of dream. It's like a thing. It's like that's what binds you and me. No matter what you do and what I do, and there are different existences. How we make money, how we live, where we're from, what religion we are, all that stuff. Those are all sort of details, but you may have a dream of that second home, or a home where you can relax and be safe and bring up kids and have animals, it's an ideal, So that was an important thing to pick the cottage, because people were. I was asking myself, why did you pick the cottage? And it's got something to do with that. So you're fooling around with that, with people's dreams. That's a dodgy thing to do. I'm trying to get into people's heads with that. So and you don't know that you're even doing that. Yeah, you really? I thought you were just making a thing and people would come and look at it. No, you're trying to make a really kind of big, serious contact, And that's such an enjoyable thing, risky, But that makes it even more enjoyable.
We did disappoint David though, because we've got 8 tons of soil around here and the top of grass, so it's also living and growing. But he also asked for a sheep and a goat.
Yeah.
We weren't able to stretch to that. I'm afraid. But can we just talk a bit about materials? First of all, for people who are familiar with, haven't seen David's work elsewhere or here. You do work with like mass-produced materials. You've worked an awful lot with newspaper and with print. You've worked a lot with tires. And obviously you've worked with wire and steel as well. But do you want to talk to us a little bit about kind of the origins of that and how you started to create these like large monumental pieces from mass-produced everyday?
Well, I mean that goes back to that 4 or 5-year-old kid growing up where he grew up in Fife, in Methil, it's called Methil. Where I was completely surrounded by industry and all kinds of industries. I grew up next to a brickworks where you had a fantastic sleep every night just listening to the furnaces rumbling away. And in the morning you would sort of race the young guys that worked in there, covered in black suit with suits sort of pouring off them, to the bakers. And the baker was right there to get the kind of, we called them butteries. These sort of rolls that would stop your heart. They're so sort of kind of bad for you, Sometimes you beat those guys to the shop, and the women would be wrapping them up in a poke, and they'd be these guys covered in suit, 18, 19-year-olds would say, "You little bastard," And but there's the brickworks there. The docks to the left, they were building oil platforms just up the road, 1,000 feet in the air. Every day going past the house, you see two 40-foot trucks taking half a leg of an oil platform along the street. You know, if you turned your head, you're looking at fantastic, beautiful, picturesque beaches. If you look the other way, you're looking at farmland, you know, farm to the nth degree. I worked in factories there, we built a whiskey bond, massive, massive place. And I'd get jobs for like 4 or 5 years as I was a student working in various bits of that, making the racks that held the casks, that held the whiskey, working where they were bottling whiskey. 1 million gallons of whiskey getting bottled a day. I learned to be extravagant like that in that place because everybody was fucking doing something. If you stood still as a kid in the street across the road, somebody would walk up behind you, slap you over the back of the head. Don't just fucking stand there, do something. You know, and it was kind of like that, you know, and and everybody was fully employed. You know, my dad was a miner. The mines were sort of fully blasting away there. And that kind of need to be, I didn't know that was creative either, you know, but that's exactly what, it was industrial creative, but that's what that was. So I'd go to art college, and I'd be looking at a guy's sculpture, which was about the size of 3 bikes lumped together. And you'd go, look at that, Dave, look at that, look how big that is. Hey, what do you think of that? Well, not very much, you know, because I've just watched this big fucking leg of an oil platform go past the window this morning as I was eating my toast. So no, I don't fucking. and you want it to make things that grand, and that I love the idea of being that, generous with having to have thousands of things, millions of things. That's where that. And if I wasn't paying attention, that was coming up through the soles of your feet. There, you were drinking it with the water, you were breathing it in with the air. It was just so sort of kind of romantic in a way, because it was mixed. If I went from the industrial bit, 5-minute walk to the beach, and I remember paddling into the water one day, just for the hell of it, into a ball of har, you know, big ball of har, big cloud. Couldn't see anything in there. I'm only like a foot deep in the water. I'm walking along the coast. My skin felt like it was being picked clean by 1,000 tiny fish, all kind of, as this thing sparkled away. I've just come from the heavy industrial bit to that incredible beauty. You feel amazing, and then the har sort of blows itself away, and you find yourself back on the beach again, and you're like, oh, you know, you're like that. Yeah. You know, the only thing missing from that particular thing was angels singing, because that's what it was like. And if you're paying, another thing about that where I was brought up is the light there is just incredible. It just shows you, if you're paying attention, it shows you everything. And the language is incredible there. You have to watch what the fuck you say in that place, because you can say 2 words to another Scot passing. All right, aye? As you're being friendly. I am all fucking right. What is it to you? You know, or whatever reaction you're going to get and go, oh my God, a psychopath. There are lots of psychopaths about the place. You learned very specifically about how people communicated and talked. I get to London, it's a damn slightly more sort of sophisticated, you know. But you can tell the minute you walk into the room, or if maybe you're after a commission, somebody's got you to go over to Ipswich to put an idea forward for a sculpture on a roundabout, and you're going to have 10 councillors there. You can walk into that room, and because of where I grew up, I know there's only one guy in here that wants me to do something. The rest of them would actively like to set me on fire and toss me out the fucking room. So there's another thing going on. But the difficulty about that is you become a bit too direct. And they just think you're just being an aggressive Scot, you know. And I used to love going to those meetings. I had a very fast sports car, 5-litre TVR Griffith that sounded like the Tasmanian devil. And if you drove anywhere in that car, took the roof off, you'd arrive with smudges of oil on your face, flies stuck between your teeth, and as if you'd dabbed 4-star petrol behind your ears because you could definitely smell it. And it was very fucking, you know, in their face. And I'd go and say, I really want to make this thing. And I'd terrify the life out of everybody in the room and never get the job. you know.
Great. I was aware of David's work in the late 90s, I suppose, and I first saw one of your pieces that went to London in 1999 when the dome with the Millennium Dome, which is now the O2, I think it's called, is it? By the river. And you had made this, just leading on to talking about collage, you'd made this really impactful sort of circular portrait of Britain with, I think you'd made a call to the people to send in a photograph of where they saw themselves at the turn of the century, and you created this incredible montage or collage, whatever we'll call it. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about that? Because collage has been kind of at the heart of a lot of what you've done, and has driven a lot of your work over the years.
Well, I mean, it's partly related to the sculpture, because sometimes when you're looking at somebody, it used to be really simple making sculpture. You got a bit of sculpture you want to make? Because we've got a budget. Yeah, I've got this, this is the idea. Oh, we like that, let's make it. Now you have to go through all sorts of box ticking episodes and God knows what else to actually make that happen, yeah? But you would make a drawing of something, and I'll be clever. I'll cut a little man out of a magazine, and I'll stick it next to my drawing, and that'll tell you what size this thing is, right? One man, maybe. And then the next time you did it, you put a dog next to the man. And the next time you did it, you put somebody else sitting on the bench watching this thing. Before you know where the hell you are, you're making collages that actually have thousands of figures in them. And that's how that developed. It developed in the work for the Dome for the 2000 celebrations, you know. And they just got crazier and crazier and crazier. They were collages, but they were like epic things. I just couldn't put enough into those images.
And if I remember correctly, on the exterior of it, there was iconic photographs of people like Hilda Ogden or the Beatles or people from British popular, say, culture. And then in the interior, which was the really epic piece.
Well, it was meant to be a portrait of the country.
Yes.
And there was landscape, there was industry, all that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. And we had a really brilliant time. As a result of doing that, I got this huge archive of hard copy images, millions of bits of paper that I then filed, sadly. I mean, people would come into our studio, and they'd always go to the walls where we'd have 500 boxes of files marked with people looking left, people looking right, people with dogs. And if anybody had told me when I was a kid, filing will really be important in your art, I would have said, fuck off. That's not going to happen. But there you go. And that actually, even more sad, they'd be able to say to assistants, bring me the file with blah, that, and that, and I'd mix them together, put them on the table. I know there's a guy in here. I used to know what was in all of those things. I can't do that now.
And he's not exaggerating. The first time I went to his studio, he's moved studios recently, I was kind of expecting a little bit of kind of chaos like this, a bit like my office. But it's almost like an archive.
Yeah.
When you walk in, you see that they just like
it's a very
files
important
and files.
part of the whole technique of things.
Yeah.
And if you spend years looking through magazines and picking things up and putting them away and filing them, you're also looking at ideas. You're seeing things that you're feeding your brain information. Mm-hmm. So you were never lacking in ideas. And it was important to me to be an ideas monger. You were really looking to be that thing. And if you didn't have an instant thing ready, you would be disappointed in yourself because you're not going to get the job. You're not going to be able to do the next thing and so on. So I like that. But it got to be a kind of, my brother and I joke about our condition. So you go to the dentist, got my teeth by the way.
Oh, good man.
And you're sitting in the waiting room and you're looking at the magazines and you're sort of, this is the man with thousands and thousands of bits of paper in his studio, and you rip a page out of the magazine because, I haven't got that one, that'll be useful. That's fucking, that's not a talent, that is something you need to get seen to. So,
we might actually start to just walk around to the back and we go towards the other room. And while we're doing that, I just wanted to ask you a little bit as well. So, obviously, a lot of the work is of huge scale, but then at the same time, you've got these incredible works that you make from like tiny little like pinheads, like what you use for sewing, or little matchstick heads, and they're like very individual and minute and tiny, but at the same time you create large scale pieces from them. So do you want to tell us a little bit about maybe working with kind of more intricate kind of materials?
Well, I mean, the early 80s, I started working in galleries and having exhibitions, and I had a show, and it was reviewed by a critic. And he said, this guy's a bit like a prisoner in a prison making things out of matches, And it was a kind of a put down, But I thought, what's wrong with matches then? What's wrong with, what's up with a And I started using them for the very first time. And I made a head of Klaus Kinski. I was working in a cinema at the time, watching Burden of Dreams, the making of Fitzcarraldo. So I made a head of Klaus Kinski, and I told the guy who'd offered me a show, I'll have it ready for the show. It was only about that, bigger than an actual head. And the process of it was something that I didn't know anything about. How the fuck am I going to do this? Slow as fuck, you know. Was late I entirely missed the show. And it would drive anybody nuts making one of those things. But you know, a small thing, but made up of 1,000, you know, like 27,000 matches, each individually glued, some of them shaped to fit into a mold, that kind of stuff. And I've made it, and I really liked it, you know, because the pins and all the pieces that we make now are kind of there. That's the very beginning of these things, from that piece. I made that sculpture and sold it. It was the first thing I sold, 500 quid. Yeah, but this collector in London bought it. He gets it back to his house. It's live matches. Sets it on fire by accident in his house. I'm thinking, fuck. Finally, make art that I can sell, and I've said it's going on fire in the guy's house. He's going. I know. This guy has some very expensive paintings on these walls. I'm thinking, shit, I am royally fucked, you know. And but he says, look at it. He's had this brilliant accent. It looks wonderful. He was like that, you know. I think, thank God, you know. So I made another 4 of those and vowed never to make them again because they took bloody forever. And then until I got teams of people who could actually work in it, and then I could inflict that misery on them. And we made hundreds of those heads. The pins came, the sort of pin work came from stuff like that. You're still looking. I mean, I guess over the years, because I used so many things, I became a kind of materials junkie. I couldn't get enough stuff, whatever that was. And I would jump the gun. Pins, I want to use pins. And I'll get Karen, my PA, who's here today.
Karen Murash, who's here.
I say, oh, get some pins from China. And so Karen gets 5 million pins. 4 million of which we've still got left in the studio someplace. You know, and you start making work with that, because with the matches, you can't touch them, you can't roll them around, but with the pins, you can make completely three-dimensional stuff. And again, it's, you know, it requires that ridiculous effort to make something. I like that. I'm really suspicious of things that happen like that. Other artists can make things that are like that, and I can look at them and go, they're great, but not me. You know, I mean, I would go to the beach that I live on, and I'd pull these massive chunks of wood off the beach. Looked like meteors that had come from another planet. And they were all kind of weird shapes, and the wind and the sand and the sea and the rain had shaped those things. I'd carve out all the kind of duff wood. Not fucking good enough for Dave Mach. No. We're going to have to put another 500,000 drywall screws in there for this to actually work into something. I'm thinking, God almighty. Really, I mean, I'd get upstairs at night and I'd tell Lindsay, my partner, hey, I put another 2,000 nails in. Oh, that's really clever. You know, so you're kind of like, I can imagine my mother seeing it, sort of holding her head in her hands going, God almighty, what happened to you?
So we'll move into the other room, but just before we go, so there's like combinations of like real things here, like that's a cast iron bath that weighs 20 stone, you have a sofa, refrigerator, we've got some original brickwork that we bought in a scrapyard, and then everything else is made. Yeah.
Well, everything, this is the weird thing, you're actually, because you're not only making a sculpture and a painting, and a variety of things there. This is as close as I'll ever get to painting. That's an odd thing for me, you know? I really like that. And I'm up the top there. You know, with a brush that's not even a quarter of an inch, painting little bits of yellow and thinking, fuck it, what an idiot. You know, thank the Lord, you know, got the Vinny and Moll and the others in the team who could actually sort of work a damn sight faster than that. And actually, I'd paint like 3 inches of the thing and think, wow, that looks great. You know, but we only got another sort of, 45 meters to sort of, to go kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So I mean, that's just kind of part of it. But we actually made, it's polystyrene, the stones are polystyrene. And you're not trying to make a real thing. You're trying to make something that is real enough that people can kind of buy into. You know, and I think that it's worked really, really well. And you would have really crazy conversations about what that stone should look like. Me, Mo, and Vinny, and Kira, and the rest of them.
Is Vincent here, actually? Is he still here? He was here earlier, just so we can point him out.
I saw him. He was in here.
He's around. We'll introduce later on. Yeah.
He's probably in the pub.
Part of the Galway team. Yeah. Anyway, let's move into the back room here. And at the end of this room, we've got the thief, which is a big crucified figure. And these kind of have their origins in your response to the 1611 King James Bible, if I'm correct?
Yeah, that piece was originally, yeah.
Yes, yeah. So, and these are manufactured, these are created from ordinary steel coat hangers like what you pick up in a dry cleaners.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe we might, as we're coming in, we'll come in. We might look at Cheetah first of all. Actually, since it's the first piece we see, which is this piece here, which is called Spike, which is of the cheetah. Incredible, powerful piece. So, a little bit about kind of the process of how these are.
These are another sort of crazy process. To make one of these things, to make the coat hangers, you have to make the cheetah in clay.
Come all the way down, everybody. Yeah.
So you make that form, so you get a shape of something that you're happy with. You have to mold and cast that into plastic. And around that with coat hangers. So you make three things in order to get one. So it's a long hours, long weeks, long months to manufacture these things. I knew that I was going to use coat hangers a long time ago, but I put it off because of that. I knew it would take a long time to make. Do it, all that kind of stuff. I held it back for quite a while, but then you find you're on your 100th work with that material. And the thing that I really liked about the coat hangers was that it just sounds terrible. When somebody asks you, I say, it's like, what material do you use to make your sculpture? Bronze, gold, coat hangers. It sounds shit, And I like the ordinary nothingness of something like that. There's still in everybody. I mean, I don't have to explain to you guys what a coat hanger is. It's there, But you make a sculpture with it, you find out other things about that material that you didn't know. You didn't know that it would be springy like a nodding dog in the back of a car. You didn't know it would have a life of its own like that you could kind of. And so I've really kind of enjoyed that thing, but it still has that naffness. And I can see that some people, especially like collectors of art, have difficulty with the idea that it's made of coat hangers. There's a kind of an insulting thing involved there, which I like playing with. That's why I use tires, that's why I use telephone directories, that's why I use magazines, that's why, pins. All those things are part of that kind of life. It's part of a fight against the kind of, what I would call the kind of pretentiousness of making art or making contemporary art in particular. I don't like that. I don't like the ideas involved. Don't bother coming in. You're not smart enough to understand this sort of stuff. You need to be culturally, fuck that. Come in and let's have a look and we'll have a chat about this stuff. Now the big piece at the end there,
the teeth.
It was part of a sculpture called Golgotha, who had three of those figures on crosses, on sort of tripod crosses, which was part of the Precious Light show we did here, 2012, yeah? And I've started exhibiting them again, so one by one, trying to get away from the religious end of that. And I'm now trying to explain that this is a man under terrible fucking stress, rather than being crucified, in an attempt, quite blatantly, to sell the fucking thing. Because at the end, it's a kind of a sculptor's curse, especially for somebody like me. I make an awful lot of stuff. We work all the time, non-stop, producing things for shows, for all over the place. And until the fucking head and I drop dead, that's how it's going to be, That's how I want it to be. Mm-hmm. I was asked about what's the word that you would use to describe yourself. And I said, and actually it was funny, I kind of leaned forward and did that. Driven! My mum saying, for fucking stop fucking fidgeting up, So you get thumped for sort of being kind of incessantly on the move and thinking about things and sort of yabbering away and all that sort of stuff. And I've got a 2-year-old who's exactly the same, drives me nuts. And I can tell though, I've actually started referring to my partner. I think you're bigging up Hitler. He's got this kind of thing about him that's all kind of, he knows exactly what the fuck is going on. He loves stuff, things, and I'm going, oh my God, this is really going to be fucking difficult, But you want to encourage that as much as you can. Although I tell neighbours, because they'll say things like, oh, he'll be talented, won't he? I say, well, if he shows any artistic talent, I'll beat it out of him.
His name is Mach, so remember that one. Yeah, we'll have him in the smaller room there. 4 beautiful arms, again made from the coat hangers, and the head of a woman.
Well, these two figures here, all the arms that are in there are from those figures. They were full-size figures. And proportionally, I somehow got them wrong. And they took months and months to make these things. So you're really disappointed by what you've got. So one day we just lopped the arms off and thinking, fuck, they look a lot better. They look like like Roman remains or Etruscan remains or something like that. They
Yes,
worked the dance.
yeah.
And then, of course, quite in a quite kind of a sort of arbitrary way, you say, we've also got 4 arms to sell as well. So you're doing that, you do that. You kind of. It's a weird thing. I was talking about not being a businessman. I was doing a judging thing in London just like last week. To a guy, Mark Cass, who has companies all over the UK selling art materials. The Cass Foundation, he's got the Cass Foundation, and he was giving prizes to artists. It was a really great thing. And he's a businessman. I was trying to explain the difference between what I think I am and what he is. And being a businessman is another thing. You imagine you're trying to sort of turn that into a business, but it's quite tricky. A businessman would not make things out of coat hangers in this sort of fashion. You're doing something else there, So you're kind of fucked by that, basically. Yeah. Which is possible. That's a good thing or not. Yeah.
We come to a close now. What's next, David?
Well, by God, I tell you, it's given me so many ideas for new pieces. I've got 4 or 5 shows immediately that I need to make sets. I've got about 50 collages to make, very big things. I've got to make those for shows. Actually, around Scotland, up in the Hebrides, there's a gallery up there, sort of working for them. One in Edinburgh, I'm going to be working for those people for the first time. There's a couple of installations that we're working on too. So lots of new things. There's a guy in London, and we're hoping to, because I'm thinking we're setting up this new thing, this new kind of way of making art, and this new kind of neo-pop or whatever the hell it is. I've got other ideas. I'm hoping to buy a really high-tech motorbike soon and have it wrapped around with the steel hawsers and pulled apart by a couple of tractors so that it'll kind of prang apart. It will make a beautiful boa stricter, make it look as if it's crushed this thing to death. And I don't know what the hell that's about. But the image, it's a bit like a musician sometimes. I remember listening to a talk about Elvis Costello before we had mobile phones and stuff like that. He said he gets so many tunes in his head that he'll forget they're good tunes, and he's forgotten some of them by the time he gets home. So he'd phone his phone and hum a few bars into his answer machine, And I love the idea of that. So sometimes you get a whole image of what you have to do. And sometimes you get a bit, you get a clue as to what the next thing is going to be. But I know that I want to get into a very kind of high-profile kind of national gallery. And I want to blow up, when you walk into a national gallery, you've got all the paintings on the wall, they're all gold framed and stuff like that. I want to make it look as if a tree is falling through there, and all the paintings are flying off the wall, and the people, the nude that was lying on one of the paintings is now up and fucking legging it and getting out of the way of the tree. So you work with it in collage as well. And I'm going to do that as a hit on the gallery. So I was here last Monday, and it was all okay in here. But over the weekend and the Monday that it's closed, because you generally close on Mondays, we've been making it someplace else. We come in over those 3 days and install it and make it look like some fucking terrible event has occurred in there, So that, I've got a guy in Geneva wants me to do, to have the gallery for a whole year and do 10 one-man shows consecutive, one after the other. I'm dying to do that. So because I work in so many different ways, you could be like 10 different artists, So there's an enormous amount of work. I'm sitting looking at the two-year-old. Am I going to get to fucking do that? Because you're so fucking, it takes ages to look after you. Jesus. Yeah. And so, so all of those things and I'm writing a lot now, and I've got a great idea for a theatre.
Here, 2 years ago when we were doing the Oligarch's Nightmare, towards the end of the show, David sent me an image of the lithograph that's on the wall outside of the second homeowner's nightmare as a little trigger for what this became. So he's also sent something with exploding pianos and whatever. So you never know that might happen in a couple of years' time. But I think you described yourself very well, David, there by saying you're driven. And we're delighted that you're driven because it's always great to be able to see the results that
it's great to be
creative
back
energy
here.
and force. One final thing just to say to you, we have a very beautiful catalogue coming in. I think it's going to come out on Thursday or Friday of the install here, which will be available in the merchandising shop out there. So we'll look out for that. It's a really beautiful publication. I see Marcus Malloy, who's just come in there, who's one of our key team. And is Vincent there as well? Marcus, give
He's
it away.
there, yeah.
We've just been chatting about you before you came in as well. So we're two of our great Galway team who collaborated and worked with David on driving this work forward. So thank you. And Vinny's pretty outside smoking a fag.
I think Vinny got bored.
So anyway, listen, David, thank you so much. It's been fantastic and insightful chatting to you this morning. Thank you, everybody, for the conversation. So enjoy the show and enjoy the rest of the visual arts program of the festival and indeed all of the rest of the program. So we look forward to seeing you around. Thank you.
Thanks for coming in.
Well done. Well done.